So welcome back to episode 2 of Sustainably Influenced. I can't believe that we're back. I'm genuinely so happy to be back and on the airwaves again. In this episode, we are exploring how technological advances are revolutionising the renewable energy sector. Today's guest is Anjali Devadasan, founder of Treeva. Speaking to Anjali was really, really eye-opening. She's also the youngest guest we've ever had on Sustainably Influenced. I'm not going to give away her age, but I was completely blown away and really felt like an old woman sitting there chatting to her. So thank you for that. In today's episode, we're looking at how decentralised energy trading platforms are enabling individuals and communities to generate, share and sell clean energy directly to their consumers. I think the biggest takeaway from today is how we highlight the potential of blockchain to accelerate that sort of transition to a greener, more kind of sustainable energy future. The story of energy has long been dominated by centralisation. Traditional utilities with their large power plants and extensive distribution networks, think like your big suppliers. If you're based in the UK, think of like British Gas, has supplied us with electricity for generations. But times are really changing. And I think there's been so much movement in this space for the past sort of 4 or 5 years that it'll be quite interesting to see where we go from here. In recent years, there's been a seismic shift in the energy sector, as I said, and that decentralisation has emerged as the game changer. So when we say decentralisation, we mean that it's not all going to be with the couple of key players. It enables individuals and communities to become more active participants in that energy ecosystem, as it were. Instead of being mere consumers, they can generate energy. They can generate it, share it, and even sell clean energy directly between each other. This shift opens up new possibilities for renewable energy sources like solar and wind. Homeowners can now become prosumers, generating their own electricity and potentially selling excess energy back to the grid or directly to their neighbours, which to me is wild when you think about it, where we've all been consuming from a couple of the big key players for, call it 70, 80 years. One key facilitator of this transformation is the concept of power purchase agreements. And this is something you're going to hear quite a bit about in the guest portion. And the abbreviation is PPAs. So these PPAs allow individuals, businesses or communities to purchase electricity directly from renewable energy providers, often at a fixed rate. And this not only promotes the growth of the renewable energy projects, but also provides consumers with more sustainable and often more cost-effective energy options, especially now during a cost of living crisis where everyone's sort of tightening their belts and thinking about where they're spending their money. And if you're unable to kind of forecast where your money's going, especially with regards to your home utilities and your bills, something like this just gives you back that autonomy and that power as a consumer. Another exciting development in this space is peer-to-peer energy trading. I mentioned this very, very briefly a minute ago, but this concept leverages blockchain technology to create secure and transparent platforms for individuals to buy and sell energy among themselves. It's like a digital marketplace for clean energy, and I think it's a really interesting and exciting innovation. Imagine a scenario where your neighbour with a surplus of solar energy can sell you power when your panels aren't producing enough. Thought about it? What do you think that means to you? This peer-to-peer exchange not only increases the efficiency of renewable energy, but how you're using it, I should say, so sort of that utilisation of it, but also fosters a sense of community as well as sustainability. Now, this season, as I said on last week's episode, we're talking a lot about how technology is helping to facilitate a more sustainable lifestyle. And with that, we're focusing quite a lot on blockchain, but there will be other technologies that we're speaking about. But seeing as we're speaking about blockchain, I want to bring up just one point. It's not just transforming the way that we buy and sell energy, it's also driving that transition to renewable energy on a much larger scale. Blockchain enables transparent and traceable tracking of energy generation and distribution. This not only ensures the integrity of renewable energy certificates, but also facilitates the creation of energy marketplaces that sort of, I want to say, incentivize cleaner energy production. By using blockchain to verify the origin and sustainability of these specific energy sources, we can encourage greater investment in renewables and accelerate the shift away from fossil fuels. It's really important to recognise that while we're making impressive strides in renewable energy, the transport sector still faces challenges in meeting their CO2 emission goals. Electric vehicles, that we've spoken about quite a few times on this podcast as well, are a promising solution. They do have their issues, but the infrastructure and affordability remain huge barriers. However, there are innovations like smart grids, which can operate and optimize that energy use for charging EVs. So it kind of offers some hope for a more sustainable transportation future, but we're quite a long way away from it. So let's speak to today's guest, Anjali, who is the CEO of the remarkable energy startup Treeva, generating renewable energy from passing transport. Anjali's background is in materials science and engineering. Let's chat to Anjali. So Anjali, I would really love to know a little bit more about what it is that Treeva actually does. So could you explain for our audience what it is that you do?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Treeva, and we're generating renewable energy from passing transport. So imagine you're driving on a motorway and you wind your window down, and it's so noisy and windy, right? So we've designed turbines which efficiently generate renewable energy from this turbulent airflow on the side of roads. And as my family were affected by disastrous floods in Kerala, I'm determined to make a difference to help mitigate climate change. And there's been a lot to learn, as my background is in material science and engineering, and I wandered into this startup world. But now with Treeva, we can truly make a positive impact.
So this is super interesting, and I'm sure everybody would love to know more about Treeva and what it is that you're doing. But we hear so much about renewable energy in the news, and I'm sure so many of my audience don't really understand what it means past things like wind turbines and solar panels. So especially with regards to things like technology and blockchain and the innovations happening in the space. So the renewable energy sector is actually undergoing a huge transformation in that sense. Could you explain how decentralized energy trading platforms utilize blockchain to empower individuals and communities to generate and share and sell that clean energy directly to consumers, to kind of disrupting that traditional energy distribution model?
Yeah, sure. So the integration of blockchain technology into the renewable energy sector has an incredible potential to revolutionize the way energy is generated, traded, and consumed. So traditional energy distribution models, they involve centralized utilities, which generate and distribute electricity to consumers. On the other hand, we have decentralized energy trading platforms, and these leverage blockchain to allow for direct peer-to-peer energy transactions so that producers of renewable energy, such as solar panel owners or wind farm operators, can sell their excess energy to nearby consumers. And this means they don't need to rely on a centralized utility or a third party, which overall enhances energy efficiencies and reduces transmission losses. By sort of enabling the creation of decentralized energy markets with blockchain, a wide range of people can get involved, including households, businesses, and community organizations. Consumers can choose to buy energy from local sources, which promotes the use of clean energy and supports local economies. But also, decentralized energy trading platforms built on blockchain promotes distributed energy generation model. And this decentralization reduces the impact of potential disruptions. If you look at traditional energy distribution models, they rely on centralized power plants and grids, making the system vulnerable to single points of failure and potential outages. For blockchain, transparency is also a key inherent advantage. All energy transactions are recorded, which fosters trust among the participants by providing a tamper-proof record of energy generation, consumption, as well as trading. And individuals can verify the source and authenticity of the energy they're purchasing, which is really important to verify that they're using renewable sources.
I like what you said there on the transparency around blockchain, because I think that I've said this before on a couple of different episodes, but I think people hear the word blockchain and it almost completely switches their brain off because they don't understand it, because they think it's this great big high-tech thing. But essentially, it's just a ledger system that stores all the information. And it makes things more transparent by using it, because you're collecting that data at each part of the chain. And I think we always highlight that transparency feature.
So how do these attributes kind of address the challenges in renewable energy, such as ensuring accurate tracking of energy production and distribution and enhancing sort of that trust, which I think is so key between the producers and consumers, and incentivizing sustainable practices?
Yes, so blockchain technology is revolutionizing this aspect of energy generation, including transparency and encouraging trust. So every time energy is generated, consumed, or traded, the details are recorded on the blockchain. And this transparent and tamper-proof records make sure that there's an accurate tracking of energy production as well as distribution. So producers, consumers, and regulators, they can access real-time information about energy generation, consumption, and trading, which helps them identify inefficiencies, optimize resource allocation, and ensure that the energy is being properly accounted for. This allows for renewable energy certification processes to be very much sped up and automated, as there's a greater degree of traceability. So this aspect is also crucial in the case of long-term power purchase agreements, PPAs, based on renewable assets, as these agreements specify the need for certification that the energy is supplied from 100% green sources. And these agreements have a huge role because they promote energy generation by encouraging large corporations to purchase this type of energy. Consumers can verify the origin of the energy that they're purchasing, ensuring that it comes from renewable sources, and producers can be confident that their energy production data is accurately recorded and can't be changed. This enhanced trust contributes to the growth of a transparent and reliable energy system.
We're all on a journey towards a greener future, making conscious choices about the products we buy. Have you ever wondered about the origins of the jewellery you wear? Well, wonder no more. Ernest Jones, Britain's favourite high street jeweller, is launching an exclusive new collection called Origin by Ernest Jones. This dazzling collection features 28 diamond rings, from classic solitaires to contemporary halo designs. But what sets it apart is the transparency it offers. Every diamond in the collection is fully traceable, responsibly sourced, and handcrafted in recycled platinum or gold. How do they do it? With cutting-edge blockchain technology, you can now trace your diamond's unique journey from the depths of the earth to your finger. The blockchain records every step, including design, sourcing, cutting, and assessing, giving you a digital passport for your diamond. Ernest Jones is a proud member of the World Diamond Council and the Responsible Jewellery Council. They've partnered with trusted suppliers to ensure their diamonds are conflict-free, responsibly sourced, and come from ethical mines that prioritise the well-being of miners and the environment. And guess what? Ernest Jones is the first UK retailer to bring this fully traceable blockchain-powered collection to their high street stores. So join us in leading the way to a more sustainable future with Origin by Ernest Jones. Let's make a difference, one diamond at a time. Shop the collection now in-store or online at ernestjones.co.uk.
I think renewable energy is just something that you take as a given. We've heard all these things about renewable energy probably in my entire lifetime. So what I want to say, over the past sort of 30 years, there's been so many advances. And I think so many people think, when you think of renewable energy, you think solar panels, you think wind turbines, you don't think of how something like this is actually factoring into that. And it's a real advancement, isn't it, when you think about it, how far we've come in that amount of time. I find it really fascinating. It just goes to show that just because we've made one solution, it doesn't mean that that's the end point, that's the end goal. There's always a way to further that. And I think something that you were talking about in particular was this peer-to-peer energy element, which I don't entirely understand, but I think makes sense from what you've said. I want to know a little bit more about the trading element of that, because it seems to be gaining momentum. And when I was doing my research, I saw peer-to-peer trading coming up, and I was thinking, how can I trade energy peer-to-peer? But I don't think it means, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't think it means me as the end consumer. How do technological advances, particularly in that kind of space, enable seamless and real-time transactions between energy producers and consumers? And how is this model sort of fostering local sustainability and energy resilience, which I think is super important?
Okay, so this part is incredibly exciting. So imagine you have excess energy from your solar panels and it's peak time for electricity, and one of your neighbors needs more electricity, so there's a high demand. They could simply buy the electricity directly from you at a cheaper price than the utility company, and you'd earn some profit. And this is what blockchain can enable. We're essentially reducing the need for a third party, which is why it's so exciting and significant. I spoke about transparency in terms of energy generation earlier, but blockchain also guarantees the transparency and security of the transaction, which remains permanently recorded in the platform. So, blockchain based energy trading platforms can also use smart contracts to automate transactions. And smart contracts are self executing contracts with the terms of the agreement directly written into the code. And these contracts define the conditions for energy trades to occur, which includes pricing, quantity, and timing. For example, when a solar panel owner generates excess energy and wants to sell it, a smart contract can automatically execute the trade when predefined conditions are met and ensure a secure and transparent process. This reduces the need for a third party and simplifies the process, so that in turn reduces the costs and increases the privacy. So, one of the first intriguing studies on this was conducted in the US by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in 2020. And the researchers experimented with a scenario of two homes with the ability to sell excess power to each other using this blockchain technology. They used a software they developed called 4C, and this uses energy preferences, such as the energy usage or budget, to control connected appliances within the home, like a washing machine or lighting. And the software informed one of the homes when it would be cheaper to buy renewable energy from the neighbor, and then they used a digital currency to complete the transaction. And they automatically matched the energy generation and demand between the two homes, which has a huge benefit in terms of energy usage efficiencies, reducing losses, as well as saving costs.
I think you're putting the power back in the pocket of the consumer, and that's what needs to happen, especially given we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis and there's so much else going on. So I want to talk a little bit about what it is that you do. And Treeva, so you're actively involved in the renewable energy sector. Can you share some of the insights of what Treeva's role is in leveraging that technology to contribute to a greener and more sustainable energy future, please?
Yes, of course. So let's start with the problem that needs solving. Globally, the power and transport industries are the two main emitters of greenhouse gases. Transport has the highest reliance on fossil fuels of any sector and emitted a huge proportion of CO2, 37% in 2021. That's according to the International Energy Agency, for anyone who's interested in sources. Despite many sustainability efforts, the transport sector is struggling to meet their net zero goals. So let's consider an example. The UK railways emit over 3 megatons of CO2 this year, the same as 2019. And the electrification of the railways is happening, but currently only 46% of the rail network is electric. And due to increasing electricity demands, there's an increasing risk of blackouts or brownouts, so reliable power on site is urgently needed. Treeva makes use of available land and passing transport to generate renewable energy, which is predictable, reliable, and efficient. The turbines rotate due to the turbulent airflow of passing transport, and the unique technology means we have 2 times the energy efficiencies and save 3 times the carbon emissions. Transport companies can generate renewable energy on site to directly power infrastructure such as lighting, digital signals, and even electric vehicle charging stations. This reliable and sustainable energy generation on site reduces reliance on external energy sources and a third-party intermediary, which significantly decreases costs of energy bills and installation, as well as ensuring the use of renewable energy. Blockchain technology could be used by customers to sell any excess energy to neighboring transport infrastructure companies, as an example, further enhancing their return on investment, as well as creating a sustainable system to encourage the use of renewable energy by the transport sector. Before we move on to the next question, I'd just like to mention that there's another important point which many are unaware of before, which is not very common. Every year, 3,800 wind turbines, the size of airplane wings, are left in landfill in Europe alone. So at Treeva, we're also working on having our turbine blades made from strong and durable composites created with recycled plastic bottles. And it would be great to see the larger wind turbines in the renewable energy sector become even more sustainable.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's a really valid and insightful point. I don't think many people know that. So we talk about the fashion industry a lot, but we don't really talk about the transport industry in this way outside of sort of CO2 emissions. So I'm glad that you've said that, because there is always an element of waste. And as you said, moving on to the last question, now we spoke previously about peer-to-peer trading. I kind of want to look past that just for a moment, just for the end question, and see, how do you sort of envision blockchain's impact on larger scale renewable energy projects, such as things like microgrids or even national energy networks? How can it really accelerate the transition to cleaner energy on a much, much broader scale, and what challenges do we need to overcome?
Yeah, sure. So blockchain-based platforms can facilitate the creation of microgrids and energy communities. And this is by using these localized energy distribution networks that operate on their own or connect to the main grid. And energy communities allow participants to collectively manage their energy resources and trade among themselves. So blockchain makes sure that there's accurate accounting of the energy flows within these smaller networks. And they can also introduce these tokenized incentives for clean energy generation. So energy producers can earn tokens for generating renewable energy, and these tokens can be traded or used to access services within the energy ecosystem. And this incentivizes the adoption of renewable energy as well as encouraging sustainable practices. In microgrids, blockchains can also include peer-to-peer trading, like we mentioned before, which can lead to sort of reduced energy wastage and more efficient use of renewable energy sources. And these microgrids can also be operated autonomously or with the main grid during disruptions. So smart contracts, like I mentioned before, can enable automatic switching between the energy sources, enhancing the resilience during outages. For large-scale renewable energy projects, blockchain can track the entire supply chain of energy production, from the source to the consumer. And this huge transparency helps make sure that the energy is truly generated from renewable energy sources and boosts the consumer trust as well as regulatory compliance. And blockchain's real-time data capabilities can enhance the management and optimization of national energy grids. So energy demand and supply data can be more accurately tracked and used to make informed decisions about energy distribution and production. And it can also streamline certification and verification of renewable energy sources, which can be a huge issue at the moment. It takes a long time. And this ensures that energy credits are accurately allocated to producers. And so this overall can incentivize more adoption of renewable energy sources. And the tokens of energy assets and rewards can also encourage individuals, businesses, communities to invest in and adopt cleaner energy sources, like Treeva, for example. These incentives can facilitate the financing of renewable energy projects and stimulate demand for clean energy. And blockchain networks also need to address scalability and energy efficiency concerns because there'll be high transaction volumes, energy consumption, which is associated with these large-scale energy systems. And it also involves regulatory considerations which need to be overcome. Existing energy regulations might not cover these new models, so we need to develop new legal frameworks which would ensure the fair competition, and we need to be able to protect consumers. And as energy systems consist of various technologies and stakeholders, achieving this interoperability between different blockchain platforms and legal systems is vital for a integration which is seamless. Blockchain enhances data security, but there are still concerns about data privacy and protection, which has to be addressed in order for this to move forward. And widespread adoption of blockchain technology really requires the education, awareness, and collaboration between stakeholders to ensure that we can have a smooth integration and user understanding. So I guess overall, blockchain has this huge and incredible potential to revolutionize larger scale renewable energy projects, as it would be able to enable transparency, efficiency, innovation, and helped us transition towards a cleaner energy world by fostering trust and having sustainable practices. We also need to address challenges related to scalability, regulation, and data privacy, as well as these huge legal challenges, which will be so necessary for us to realize the full potential of blockchain in the energy sector.
Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining us in this week's episode of Sustainably Influenced. In our next episode, we'll actually be diving into the really fascinating world of circular economies and how they're shaping our approach to consumption and waste. Until next week, make sure you subscribe and listen back to previous episodes of Sustainably Influenced on all good podcast platforms. You can follow at Sustainably Influenced on TikTok and Instagram and our newly launched platform. I'm Bianca Foley. Thank you for listening. This season of Sustainably Influenced was produced by Content is Queen, sound editor Amber Miller, and presented by Bianca Foley.